in chapter 6, we talked about adding and subtracting and multiplying polynomials, and then we went into graphing them, and now we're going to talk about polynomial long division. So this is section 6.3, and your VICs for this section are when you divide polynomials, you still have your divisor as whatever you're dividing by, the dividend, which is the number you're dividing into, and the quotient, which is your answer. And so when you set up your long division, it's going to look like this. And your steps, you're going to divide, then you're going to multiply your top number by your divisor, subtract down, and bring down your next term. Very similar to long division in 4th grade or so, whenever you learned long division, but this time just with polynomials. And then one last thing to note is you don't want to forget a 0 as a placeholder for any term not in the polynomial. So if you're given a polynomial that says 2x cubed minus x plus 1, and you don't have that x squared term, you want to put in a 0x squared to hold the place for your x squareds, because you'll get them as you divide. Example 1 says divide x squared plus 3x minus 12 by x minus 3. X squared plus 3x minus 12 is your dividend, and then x minus 3 is your divisor, or a factor. So when you set it up, you have x squared plus 3x minus 12 as your dividend right here underneath this, and x minus 3 is your divisor out here.
Which is not always a factor, but sometimes a factor only if your remainder is 0.
And when you divide, you're going to get your quotient up top, like we saw in the VICs. So what you want to look at is x minus 3, and you want to look at this x first. X times what is going to give you x squared? Or x squared divided by x gives you what? And the answer is x. So I put an x on top, and that's your dividing stage. Then you want to take this x, and you multiply x times x gives you x squared, and x times negative 3 gives you negative 3x. That's your multiply stage. Next, you want to subtract. So I subtract this whole term, that's why there's parentheses around it. I subtract x squared minus 3x. So x squared minus x squared is nothing. 3x minus negative 3x. Don't forget that minus negative turns into a positive, so I end up with 3x plus 3x gives me 6x. Then I bring down the negative 12. That's the last step, bring down. And then you repeat the steps. So now I'm going to look at 6x divided by x is what? So x times 6 is going to give me this 6x. So I put a 6 up here. 6 times x is 6x, and 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. So that's your multiply step. Subtracting 6x minus 6x is nothing. And negative 12 minus negative 18, it's really negative 12 plus 18, gives you 6. So this is your remainder. So like I said, your quotient is what ends up here. So your quotient we're going to call q of x, and it's equal to the x plus 6 from up there, plus your remainder as a fraction over your divisor. So my final answer is going to say q of x equals x plus 6 from here, plus 6 over x minus 3. 6 coming from here, x minus 3 coming from here. And that's your answer. Example 2 is about checking factors. So we spoke on the last board about how this x minus 3 might have been a factor if the remainder came out to be 0. So when you're checking factors, you're looking to see if your remainder comes out 0, and then the divisor is a factor. If it doesn't come out to 0, like in our other example, then it's not a factor. So determine whether x plus 4 is a factor of x cubed plus 3x squared minus 6x minus 7. So x cubed plus 3x squared minus 6x minus 7 is my dividend under here. X plus 4 is my divisor. And I'm going to go through all those steps to divide this polynomial by this polynomial now. So x cubed divided by x is x squared.
Notice that we put the x squares, they match up one over the other. We didn't mention that in the last slide, but it is important to make sure that you write clearly and show all of your work and your steps on each separate line, because if it gets too jumbled, it's going to be very difficult to read.
So when I do x cubed divided by x and I get x squared, I want to put my x squared over this x squared in my dividing problem. So then I multiply. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 4 is 4x squared. And then I'm going to subtract. X cubed minus x cubed is nothing. 3x squared minus 4x squared is going to give me a negative x squared. And then I bring down my negative 6x. So negative x squared divided by x is a negative x. And when I do negative x times x, I get negative x squared. And negative x times 4 is negative, oh, that I brought down. Never mind, I'm confusing myself. Is negative 4x. So when I subtract them, negative x minus negative x squared is nothing, is 0. Negative x minus negative 4x is negative 2x. And I'm going to bring down my negative 7. So now I want to do negative 2x divided by x is negative 2. And multiplying negative 2 times x is negative 2x. And negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. And subtracting, negative 2x minus negative 2x cancels out. And negative 7 minus negative 8 is 1. And because the remainder is 1, x plus 4 is not a factor. Only if this remainder was 0 would x plus 4 or whatever they give you be a factor.